care about what that means. We're just gonna keep eating and eating.
Before I start, I just want you guys to see something. In case you did not know, I have actually met the actors for both Daredevil and Kingpin. And if you want the proof, I had them sign my Daredevil #1 comic that I got here. I've met both of them. I'll probably put a picture right here of Kingpin. I didn't get a picture with Charlie, but I did meet him. Very nice guy. Very nice guy. So, after years of waiting, we finally have the new Daredevil show. Daredevil Born Again. Now, this show has had a bit of problems, okay? So I haven't done TV reviews before, so I'm gonna divide this into a few sections, okay? So first I'm gonna give a little bit of context for just like a minute here, and then it's gonna be the spoiler-free section where I'm gonna talk about the show broadly without spoilers, and then I'm just gonna be the spoiler section after, because I've seen the first 2 episodes, and I want you guys to know what I think. So when the Netflix Daredevil show came out, it was huge. Okay, it was gigantic. Like, everybody was talking about it. Everybody was watching it, especially if you were into Marvel stuff at the time. It was a big deal. And they kind of had their own little interconnected universe of Marvel shows with Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, The Punisher eventually. And, of course, the most famous of these, obviously, is Daredevil. And this show rocks, man. The OG show, I mean. Well, long story short, the license that they had with Netflix expired. And they didn't renew it because Disney was kind of working on their own streaming service at the time. So they wanted to consolidate all their things under one roof. And so, long story short, Daredevil had a fantastic 3rd season, but then it ended because, they just didn't have it anymore. And so began this big campaign to save Daredevil, and it was a big deal for a lot of people, myself included. I was fighting for that pretty hard, and because it's one of my favorite shows of the last 10 years. And initially, the show was announced, Daredevil Born Again, as it wasn't going to be a continuation, though. It was going to be a hard reboot of this show, essentially, is what it was going to be. And that is not something that most fans were down for. They hired these writers who wrote Covert Affairs, which, why? I mean, I've seen an episode or 2 of that show, but I do not see what that has to do with Daredevil. I'm sorry, but I don't. Okay. Yeah, it wasn't gonna have Karen. It wasn't gonna have Foggy. It wasn't gonna have. Wasn't gonna have a bunch of characters. Really, it was gonna be a hard reboot. The Netflix stuff was no longer gonna be canon. And they get about halfway done shooting it, or give or take, based on what I understand. And then the big Disney CEO got changed out from Bob Chapek to Bob Iger, which is the person who basically gave Kevin Feige his authority back. This all makes sense. Just give me a second. And whenever that happened, Kevin Feige basically scrapped the whole thing, fired everyone in regards to the directing and the and the writing team, and basically started the show over from scratch, almost completely. Basically everything is gone now. And so it got retooled and changed. They probably kept a few things here and there just to save money, but that's about it. And they brought back Karen, they brought back Foggy. They even got John Bernthal to sign on for this, because if you guys don't know, John Bernthal, who plays Punisher, is notoriously protective of this character, and said he would only ever come back if he thought the script was good enough. And so, this was a big deal. And so now we have Daredevil Born Again. In this case, quite literally, where this is a continuation of the Netflix show. For sure. The actors have said this many times, that this is 100% a continuation. And Vincent D'Onofrio, who plays Kingpin, even said he calls it season 4. Because that's what it is, essentially. But it's a soft reboot of the show. Keeping in mind everything that came before. So what do I think of it? I like it a lot. It's got some stuff that I'm not. I don't know if I'd call them negatives quite, but there is one or two negatives. But I would say overall, I'm feeling very positive about this show. It feels like the. Okay, I'm getting my head of myself. So the plot, without spoilers, there is something that happens in episode 1 that kind of changes, that like has ripple effects to all the rest of the characters, all of them, and I can say that without spoilers. There's something that happens in episode 1, basically the opening scene, really. Maybe it's the second scene, whatever. Opening episode causes Matt to stop being Daredevil. Okay, I'll put it that way. And because of that, there is a time jump in which you see Matt kind of doing his own thing here. Kingpin is running for mayor at this point, which is wild. And it's essentially about, so far, just the first 2 episodes, as far as I understand it, is cut between 2 things, 2 storylines here. One of them is Matt trying to represent this one person who needs help after a situation involving police. And kind of doing his thing that he likes to do, helping the oppressed, things like that, which I think is good. Matt feels like himself here, which is very nice. I really thought that they would try to like squeaky clean him. No, they do not. He very much acts like the stubborn, selfish Catholic that we know. And, good intentions and everything, but boy, there's a lot of anger there, and it's rising. And the other plot line here is Fisk running for mayor, doing optics, interviews, stuff like that, winning the people over, as well as the institutions that he runs, like the police force, things like that. And so what do I think of it? I think it's pretty cool. There are a couple little things that I don't like, but I'll talk about that in a second. Here's what I do like. Okay, so what I like for sure is it feels different, man. Like if you watch the other Disney Plus Marvel shows, they do not feel on the same level that this show does. At least from what I can tell, except for Loki, which I think is a diamond in the rough. Usually these shows kind of feel a little preachy, the dialogue is a little heavy. They kind of say outright what the plot is and what the characters are thinking and feeling. Whereas in this, and the Netflix show particularly, it's more vague. Like you'll see certain things, like Matt will be kind of sitting there going like this, and he'll just be like, and you can tell from his body language that something is off, or how he's feeling about something. There's a particular testimony where you can just tell that he's not okay, but he manages to hide it, and only we as the audience kind of see it. So that's kind of a big deal, and I like when that happens. And what else do I like? The fight scenes are a bit of a mixed bag, okay? So on one hand, the fight scenes with Matt himself, not Daredevil, Matt Murdock, are incredible. I've only seen, I think, 1 or 2 so far, but I think it's only 1, really, in episode 2. You'll know what I mean. But the scenes with Daredevil, that CG is looking a little rough, if I'm being honest. They're trying to lean just a just a smidge more into the fantastical side of Daredevil, and because of that, it's he does like the thing from the comics where he like shoots out the cable and swings on it and stuff like that and flies between buildings, and there's a lot more acrobatic stuff, at least in the scene that I've seen. So it's only episode excuse me, it's only episode 1 that I even see this, so like not a whole lot to go on yet. But I will say the fight scenes are good. They're well choreographed. I appreciate the effort here, and I can see it. I see you. But they feel a little hokey in regards to the CG, and it makes you break immersion just a tiny bit. There's a sequence in episode 1, basically the very beginning, essentially, in regard that's similar to the one take action scene that they had in on Netflix, and I don't think it reaches those Netflix levels. I'm just going to be honest, but I do appreciate the effort, and I see it. I can physically see the effort, and I appreciate it. So for me, the characters all act like they're supposed to, which is interesting. I really thought that they would change some stuff. They really don't. This is very clearly a continuation, not a reboot. It's a new creative direction, a new path, as they've kind of put it, but it is the same. It is a continuation of your show. Yeah, the only other real criticism that I kind of have is two more things, and then we're gonna go all positives because I really like what I'm watching here. The episodes always kind of end strangely, at least from what I've seen. It's got this like punk rock music thing to it at the very end of the first 2 episodes, and I think that it's not fitting either of those. Okay, so at the end of episode 1, there's like a small thing that it's not something that happens per se. Like nothing big happens. It's not a spoiler. It's just what's happening on screen doesn't necessarily match the music that they chose for it. If that makes sense. It's hard to say exactly. And in episode 2, something does happen at the end of the episode, and it really does not fit the music that they play afterward. There is. It ends on a fight scene, I'll put it that way. I think that's safe to say. And the music that they play as soon as it's over into the credits is really odd choice. So I don't know how I feel about that. A little bit of tonal problem there, but overall the dialogue is fantastic. It reminds me of the old show. It does feel like the old show, just different. I'm not gonna say Disneyfied because it's not really. It's just as bloody, dude. Like we're gonna talk about that in spoilers, but there is something that happens at basically the very beginning of this show where I'm surprised Disney even allowed that. I think I could say that pretty safely. But no, honestly, overall, I'm pretty impressed with what I saw. I also think some of the camera, like the way they filmed it, made it where it's too bright, even during nighttime. Like you can see everything clearly, and that's something I really liked about the Netflix show is how dark it was. Not even just like thematically and stuff, just like visually dark. Like if there's a hallway with flickering lights and stuff, you can't see shit. But in this, it almost feels like you can basically see everything, and so it I think it takes away a little bit of the edginess of the show, and I would like to see that changed in the future, but that's okay. Um, it's not end of the world. So for me, if I was to rate both of these episodes, I'm going to say the first one. That's a tough one because, like I said, there's something at the very beginning that happens, and if they don't pay this off, I could see myself changing this rating later. So we'll have to see. I think I'd say both of these I can rank them together because that's how they were released, so I can do that. Episode 1 and 2, I would say both of those are each an 8 out of 10. I think they're fantastic, and I also think I would go so far as to say that we're back a little bit. I'm not sure yet because Disney Plus shows have had good openings before, but I feel pretty confident about this one. I really think that our boy is back. I really do. And so, yeah, I'm gonna have to stick with an 8 out of 10. Now, join me for spoilers, which we are going to do right now. So, just a warning: spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. There is a gigantic spoiler at the beginning of this season. I am not gonna tell you. I'm just warning you now. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so Foggy dies, and it starts off pretty fucked. Foggy, Karen, and Matt are hanging out at Rosie's, which is lovely that they brought her back. By the way, that made me so happy. I love that bar. That place is so cool, so fun. Uh, anyway, long story short, they were drinking, having a good time. Foggy's flirting with this other lawyer lady, and he gets a call from he gets a call from a client who basically said that someone is stalking him. And Foggy goes outside. Matt hears him with his super hearing, and said client says that someone's following him, like in the house. And so Matt kind of goes after him as Daredevil to try and stop it. And as soon as he leaves, this whole scene is rough. Sorry, I just finished it. Matt gets like halfway there, it seems like, to the place he's supposed to go to as Daredevil, and then he realizes that it was a distraction. And Bullseye wanted to get Foggy out in the open, and he shoots him. Like immediately. Almost immediately shoots him. Puts a giant round right through. And when that happens, Matt flies back, beats the absolute shit out of Bullseye, creates this pretty cool fight scene where they're fighting in the bar, and it leads like up the stairs and onto the roof. Like it's like a one take action scene that's kind of like flickering back and forth between Foggy and his heartbeats getting slower, and Matt fighting. And it seems the way this film is so impressive, it's almost like he's fighting harder the more his friend is struggling, right? I love the way they film this. Um, and then it gets to the point where Matt's on the roof with Bullseye. He beats the living shit out of him. And Bullseye basically can't do anything to help himself. He's just stuck there. And Matt is listening for his friend's heartbeat, and it stops. And Foggy dies. Like straight up. He's gone. There's no, unless I'm missing some, I do not see a world where they can fake this, but he's dead. And Matt like just starts screaming. He punches the shit out of Bullseye again, and he literally just throws him off the roof, like straight up. He just throws him off. He doesn't care. And Bullseye just goes splat on the pavement. And I thought he killed him for a second. I was like, are they really gonna do this? But no, Bullseye was still alive, although injured quite a bit. Matt did try to kill him, though. That's important for this story. And so yeah, Foggy dies straight up. Um, and that skips to a year later where Matt is no longer with Karen at the Nelson, Murdoch, and Page. Uh, that is not a thing anymore. And yeah, so. Oh boy, that's hard to even talk about because that scene was taken so seriously. He basically commits a mass shooting. Bullseye does. He shoots like a dozen people and kills a lot. Like it's a lot. It's a lot to watch, and I'm surprised that Disney let them do that. To be honest with you, um, so yeah, Matt's kind of just moving on, doing his own thing, and when that happens, excuse me. And when that happens, he's with the girl that Foggy was flirting with in the bar, the lawyer lady, And Matt goes to the police station at the request. Well, no, I'm skipping ahead a little. Okay. Uh, Mayor Fisk is a thing now. So Wilson Fisk is talking with Vanessa, who is now his wife, who is now running the criminal empire, which is wild. Due, I think, to the events of Echo, but I didn't watch Echo, so I don't care to. I'm sorry. Uh, and so because of that, he hasn't really been running the criminal empire anymore. But now he's running for mayor. He does end up getting elected, which is wild. But before that happens, Matt and him have a talk. There is a scene in a diner, which I'm sure you guys have seen in the trailers and stuff, which is incredible. I love it. It reminds me of the old show. The way it was written, the way it's framed, like it. Oh, God. I appreciate it. So, anyway, it's basically a threat. Okay, Matt shows up essentially to tell him, you step out of line at all, and I'm going to be there. And Kingpin basically says, who's threatening me, you or your other half, essentially. And they just kind of threaten each other, and it's such a cool scene. They kind of talk about their lives and what things have happened since then. They reference some events from other Marvel stuff, namely Kingpin, like with Hawkeye and with Echo. Uh, but it's essentially a threat. Okay, and it's interesting to me that Kingpin is now anti-vigilante. I mean, he was always anti-vigilante, but in this case, he's anti-vigilante for a different reason. He's doing that for a political position, and so he's kind of like manipulating the people with that kind of like, we don't need vigilantes on our streets. We need cops like you, kind of thing. And so yeah. But anyway, the episode essentially ends with Matt having heard that Wilson Fisk is the mayor now, which is wild. So that was crazy. And that was just the first episode. So the second episode, I know I'm kind of blowing through this, but I just want to talk about like the spoilers that I think are interesting. If you've seen it, you already know what I mean. So like, put in the comments if you want to like talk about specific stuff. I'll mention it, but I'm not going to go over everything. So I'm just going to talk about the stuff that I think is most interesting. So episode 2 essentially picks up right after episode 1 leaves off. In this particular case, it's about Matt wanting to represent this man. So when Matt goes to the police station to represent this girl, a simple DUI case, he hears these police people beating this man in the other room. Now this man was shown at one point earlier attacking, trying to defend this random civilian from these two guys beating him up. There was an incident. They got into a fight, and one of those guys hits in front of a train and just dies. And then the other of the two assailants throws out his badge and says that he's police. So that means this guy just arrested him for assaulting an officer, essentially, even though he's doing the right thing, clearly. Um, and when Matt visits him, like I said, they're beating on this guy, and he hears him because he has super hearing and shit. They're calling him a cop killer and all that. And when this happens, Matt pops in, talks with him, checks his heart rate by listening, so he knows he's telling the truth. And the rest of the episode is essentially about him going to try and find the witness that could possibly maybe exonerate this guy. And so because of that, Matt digs a little bit deeper, and one of Matt's allies, who's like searching this guy's house, Alo, I think is his name, Alo, realizes that this guy's White Tiger, which is a vigilante with a mystical necklace and shit. They don't really explain that, but that's okay. So yeah, Matt has personal stakes in this, and that scene is really good, where Matt visits him in prison, and he talks to him about how selfish he's being, essentially, like what he's doing to his family and all this shit. And I'm just like, ooh, you got that Catholic guilt, that hypocrisy. Nice job, Matt. Because he loves doing that. That's what makes him such an interesting character. And so, long story short, he decided to represent this man. And meanwhile, Fisk is doing like all these like little things here and there to try and sway the people. There's a scene where he's like trying to cross a bridge, and there's this big pothole. Like, when I say pothole, I mean like Thor flew in from space type pothole. This is a crater, okay? And so everyone has to drive around it. And the construction workers said, we can't fix it. We're waiting on a permit to be approved. And Kingpin says, consider it approved. Now fix this, basically. And so they did. And he's used that as like a PR tool. He's like, I said I'd get things done. And the people are recording him and cheering and all this stuff. And I'm kind of just like, ooh, this man's a manipulator. You guys are falling for it. It does feel a little weird to me that they would even let this man get into office. That's something that I think kind of makes me a little iffy on the show. I don't know if they do a good enough job explaining that, personally, because that is weird to me. I mean, I guess it's not that weird given current events, but I think it's weird. And so, anyway. So you see, like, the stuff that Fisk is doing in public to try and sway the people, which is interesting to me, because he's always good at that kind of thing. And Matt just kind of is losing his temper over time. He sees the injustices of the world. He hears people screaming for help. Like, he sees Fisk doing stuff. He just kind of, like, white knuckling the whole episode, you know? And then towards the end, he talks to someone in regards to, oh, where's this witness? You know, the guy that the White Tiger saved when he wasn't even a vigilante. Like, he was just a normal guy. Well, he found him because he was eavesdropping on one of the cops who beat the fuck out of that guy for no reason. And he got an address, and he got there first, got the witness out, and these two cops show up. And they essentially say, I don't give a fuck if you're blind. I'm going to beat you senseless. And so they start hitting him. And Matt's like, stop. You don't want to do this. And they keep hitting him. And he's like, stop. And then they pull a gun. And he's like, you don't want to do this. Again, he warned them many times. And then they put it straight to his head. And he goes full Daredevil. He fucking breaks his arm. He fucking... Oh, God, this scene is so incredible. It's the best fight of the show so far, in my opinion. Oh, my God. It's short. It's kind of short, though. He fucking breaks this dude's arm, and, like, this part is sticking out and shit. Or maybe it's like this. This part's sticking out. Whatever. I don't even care. He fucking... It's the thing from the trailer where, like, his thing is bent the wrong way, and I'm like, that's gross. He fucking bashes this dude's head against a table. He fucking throws him into a refrigerator. I thought he killed him, to be honest. I thought he might have killed one of these guys, but I don't think so. Another thing I noticed, too, is that the cop had, like, a Punisher tattoo. Right here. Which is interesting to me. I wonder if they're going to do that thing from the comics where, like, these cops take after the Punisher and, like, his beliefs and stuff, like this his system of law, where he just kind of kills whoever needs it, essentially, and they'll cover it up if they need to, kind of thing. I think they might do that, which might explain why Frank is in this show somewhere, which I think is cool. Overall thoughts. I think it's pretty good. I think at this trajectory, if they keep this way, I would say this is probably going to be my favorite of the Marvel shows. Probably by a good margin. Maybe. Loki is really good, but it's definitely like top 2. Like, that's how good it is. It does not feel like the others. Some of the other stuff feels like it came off a kind of a conveyor belt. Not trying to be mean, but it does. This does not feel like that. This feels different. They even remixed the theme for like the main like intro theme. It's a bunch of like stone crumbling. It looks really cool, but they remixed the music too, which I think is cool. Uh, would I say it's as good as the Netflix show's first two episodes? No, no, I wouldn't. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, though. It means it's still good. And you know what? They're finding their footing. They're giving me what I asked for, essentially. And I have nothing but respect for that. They even hired like the guy who made Punisher to help make it and shit. Like I can I can deal with a little bit, okay? If the effects aren't that great and everything else on paper, everything written down is working for me, which it is so far, I've got no issues. Genuinely. Like this is okay. All right. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Daredevil Born Again, the first two episodes. I really want to post a video about this each week because I'm not very great at posting videos, I'm going to be honest. But, I'm really into this show, and clearly, I'm really into Daredevil. So I would like to do that. So, anyway, drop a follow if you like the content. I appreciate it. Or subscription, sorry. Subscribe. Yeah, no, that's about all I got to say. I have another video I'm working on. I'm probably gonna post it. Maybe by the time you're seeing this, maybe not. I don't know. It's an angry one. I am pretty angry at a particular company right now, and well, you'll see. But anyway, I hope you guys have a good night, and I appreciate it. I'll see you next week.